When we think about the American West, a few big names always seem to pop up. But for every one of those famous Pathfinders, there are just countless others whose stories have been pretty much lost to time. Well, this is one of those stories, and it's about the incredible journey of a man named Jacob Dodson.
So if I ask you that question, who comes to mind? Probably names like Lewis and Clark, maybe Kit Carson, or John C. Frémont, right? These were the legends, the so-called Pathfinders, who literally drew the map of the continent. But here's the thing, their expeditions were never solo missions, no way. They relied on a whole team of skilled, tough, and absolutely indispensable people.
And this was one of them. His name was Jacob Dodson. And his journey, it is just remarkable. It takes him from the halls of power in Washington, D.C., all the way to the most treacherous trails of the American West. He was an explorer, he was a soldier, and he was a patriot who served his country in ways that most people could never even imagine.
So where does a story like Jacob Dodson's even begin? Well, it's probably not where you'd expect. Not out in some rugged wilderness, but right in the heart of Washington, D.C., at the very center of American political life.
Okay, so Dodson's story starts in a place of just deep contradiction. He was born a free black man, right there in the nation's capital, a city that was, at the same time, a major hub for the slave trade. He grew up working in the household of Senator Thomas Hart Benton, who just happened to be one of the most powerful champions of westward expansion. And it was in that powerful circle that he met the man who had completely changed his life, the famous explorer John C. Frémont, who was actually Senator Benton's son-in-law.
So, at an age when most young guys are just trying to figure out what to do with their lives, Dodson makes this huge choice. He leaves the relative comfort and stability of the Benton household and volunteers for what was, frankly, one of the most dangerous things you could possibly do, an expedition to map a route to the Pacific Ocean. And this, right here, is where Dodson's story just takes off. Yeah, he may have joined the team as a valet, but the frontier, well, it had a funny way of stripping away titles and demanding pure, raw competence.
See, out in the wild, nobody cared who you were back east. What mattered was, could you ride? Could you track? Could you scout? Could you survive? And Jacob Dodson, he proved to be absolutely exceptional. He became a skilled horseman, an expert scout, and he earned the deep respect of Frémont and all the other hardened frontiersmen on the trail.
And look, this isn't just some story somebody told later. In his official reports, Frémont himself praised Dodson's performance. During a brutal winter crossing of the Sierra Nevada, I'm talking a time when the entire expedition was on the brink of starvation and total disaster, Dodson was one of the men Frémont personally relied on for reconnaissance, trusting his skill and his stamina in what were literally life-or-death situations.
Just to put this all into perspective, they were gone for 14 months, over a year. That is an unbelievable test of human endurance, a journey that pushed every single man to his absolute limit across thousands of miles of dangerous, uncharted territory.
And what did he get paid for this life-threatening journey? $493. Now, I know that might not sound like a lot of money to us today, but back in the 1840s, when a skilled laborer might earn, say, $1 a day, this was a substantial sum of money. It was a small fortune.
And here's the crucial point. That payment wasn't for a simple valet. No way. That was the pay of a highly valued, essential member of the team. The government's own ledger proves just how indispensable Jacob Dodson had become. And believe me, his service to the nation was far from over.
Dodson's time with Frémont didn't stop there. On his next expedition, the mission changed dramatically, and Dodson would go on to perform a feat that became the stuff of absolute legend. So, Frémont's third expedition arrives in California just as the Mexican-American War is kicking off, and all of a sudden, this scientific party becomes a military unit, the California Battalion. Dodson trades his explorer's tools for a rifle and serves right alongside the other men to help secure California for the United States.
And this is where Dodson's legend was really forged. Frémont needed to get an urgent wartime message from Los Angeles up to Monterey and back, a mission of critical importance. He chose just two men to ride with him, a local landowner and Jacob Dodson. Together, the three of them covered 840 miles. That's about the distance from New York City to Chicago, and they did it in just 8 days, on horseback, through hostile territory.
Just think about that for a second. Only 76 hours of actual riding time to cover 840 miles. It was a completely astonishing feat of endurance and horsemanship that really solidified Dodson's place as one of the most capable men on the entire American frontier.
So after his incredible service out west, Dodson's story takes this really poignant and powerful turn. It's a turn that reveals the deep, deep contradictions of the nation that he had so bravely served.
You see, his contribution wasn't just noted in some captain's log. This document right here, this is an official act of Congress from 1856. It authorizes full pay and allowances for Jacob Dodson for his service as a private in the California Battalion during the war. His country officially recognized him as a soldier.
But let's flash forward to 1861. The Civil War breaks out. Dodson, who's now back in Washington, D.C. and is a proven combat veteran, steps up again. He writes a letter to the Secretary of War offering to raise a unit of 300 free black men to help defend the capital. He was a patriot, ready to serve his country once more.
And this was the response he got, a flat-out rejection. The very same government that had retroactively paid him for fighting in one war now refused his offer to fight in another, and it was solely because of the color of his skin. I mean, what a heartbreaking denial for a man who had already proven his loyalty beyond any doubt.
But despite this rejection, Dodson's story doesn't end in bitterness. Actually, the final chapter of his life brings his entire journey full circle in a really remarkable way.
After all his adventures at West, Dodson's life really did come full circle. He used his connections and his sterling reputation to get a position as a messenger for the United States Senate. So for 2 decades, the man who had mapped the farthest reaches of the continent walked the halls of the U.S. Capitol, serving at the very heart of the government he had fought so hard to expand.
And from his unique position right there, inside the Senate, Jacob Dodson was a witness to history. He saw the nation tear itself apart and then slowly begin to heal. He lived long enough to see the passage of the Great Reconstruction Amendments, the ones that abolished slavery and established citizenship and voting rights for black men, the very rights he had fought for, both on the frontier and in his petition to the War Department.
Jacob Dodson's life was just an incredible testament to courage, skill, and patriotism, all in the face of unbelievable obstacles. His story, pieced together from census records, military reports, and acts of Congress, it forces us to really reconsider who we picture when we think of an American pioneer. And it leaves us with one really crucial question. Whose stories are still out there, just waiting to be found?